what we talked about last time. So last time I introduced uh, a method for counting problems known as generating functions. And towards the end, I applied it to a tiling problem on graphs, which we call perfect matches. So today I want to go more on the topic of tilings in detail. And the aim today will be less pedagogical and more informative. So one of the things I want to impress upon you is that even though the problems are very easy to state, some of the results are quite deep, and uh, they have garnered the attention of some of the best mathematicians in the world. Okay, so without further ado, here is the outline. So I'll first introduce what tilings are in a precise mathematical sense and with examples. And then I will show you three classes of tilings. And I will show you some nice pictures of what happens if you pick a tiling at random. So something quite remarkable happens, and I will, I think, not have time to get into the ideas of the proofs. But yeah, please feel free to ask questions. So here is a kind of random problem, recreational problem, let me say. So here is this region in the plane. It's a funny looking non-convex region, polygon. And here are some funny looking tiles. And I ask you, here is a challenge. Find a way to tile this region with these tiles. Okay? So, of course, I'm not going to ask you to do it right away. But if you have a lot of spare time, you can sit down, cut out this region, print this sheet out, cut these shapes in this region and try to tile them. And if you work a little, you get that the solution looks like this. So what's the point? So the point is that this is not a mathematically interesting problem. Why is that? Well, anybody can sit down and cut any region and cut out any region, and from that region they can go and cut out some tiles and give it to you, right, to do. Why should I get interested in trying to solve this problem? I mean, if I have free time on my hands, maybe I will do it. But there's nothing natural about such a problem. This is a tiling. The kind of things that we are interested in are those that arise, quote unquote, naturally. They should be relevant from some point of view. Okay. You might not appreciate the point of view, but there should be a point of view. This for this tiling problem, there's nothing special either about the region or about the tiles. So why should I care? So this is not a mathematical interest. So let me tell you, begin with some general notions. So a tiling problem, just like in the previous case, gives us a region and a set of tiles. And we are asked to cover the region using those tiles either exactly once or multiple times. But the thing is that we should cover that region completely, and there should not be any overlap among the tiles. Okay, so all the tiles should be disjoint, and the union of the tiles should be the entire region. Nothing should be missing. There should be no holes or no overlaps. You're allowed to usually translate the tiles. Again, just like the previous example. In some problems, you are allowed to rotate them, but nothing else. You cannot reflect the tiles. You cannot, turn the tiles like that upside down. And you cannot cut the tiles. I mean, if you're allowed to cut the tiles, then the problem becomes trivial. Okay, so this is the general problem. And what are the kinds of questions one can ask? So first one can ask if a tiling exists. So you're given some region and you're asked to tile it. Does that tiling exist? Does any tiling exist? Suppose you play with the problem, you try various things, and you find that no matter how hard you try, you cannot find a tiling. Then can you prove mathematically that there is no tiling? It's not just that you are stupid. It's that there is a fundamental reason why there is no tiling. So, but suppose there, on the other hand, that there is a tiling. So suppose there is one, then in principle there could be many, and this is the combinatorial aspect of this problem. Can you count exactly how many there are? Okay, so this is another natural problem. Like I said in the last lecture, sometimes it's difficult to give an exact formula for how many tilings there are. So usually one is thinking of a family of regions and the fixed set of tiles. I'll give you examples very soon. Then as the size of the region gets larger and larger, can you give a formula? If you can't count exactly how many there are, maybe you can say approximately. Can you construct explicit examples of tiles? This is another interesting problem. In some cases, the region is very symmetric, and then you can expect tilings to have special symmetries. Then can you count tilings with special symmetries? This is another natural problem. On the probabilistic side, can you generate a random tiling? So what do I mean by random tiling? So if you know a bit of probability, I mean a uniformly random tiling. So among the entire set of tilings, if I close my eyes and sort of pick one at random, like a lottery, how does it look like? Okay. Another problem is whether you can transform a tiling to another one, to any other one by simple operations. Can you sort of make some simple flips, moves here and there, and generate, starting from one tiling, can you generate any other tiling? Okay, so that's a typo, it should be any other. Okay, so here is a problem to start you off. You all know what a chessboard is, I presume. So here is a chessboard. It's an 8 by 8 square region. And what I do is I cut out two opposite squares, diagonally opposite. Okay. And I want to tile this region with dominoes. What are dominoes? They are two adjacent tiles, squares. They can be either like this or like this. Right? So horizontal or vertical. So there are two of them. And I want you to tile this entire region with dominoes. Okay. So it's maybe not so easy. You try a little bit and see if you can find a tiling, and then if you find one tiling, I want you to count how many are there. Okay. So the amazing result is, you can see it if you color the cells of the chessboard. So suppose you color the cells of the chessboard black and white. So you know that a chessboard has 64 cells. It's an 8 by 8 grid. And you also know that there are 32 black and 32 white cells. Okay. Now, if you observe carefully, what I've done when I've removed two diagonally opposite cells is that I've removed two white cells. Okay. This is the key point. I am removing both cells of the same color. Now, if you think about it, every domino will cover two adjacent horizontal cells or two adjacent vertical cells. And so, every domino covers exactly one black and one white cell. No exception. It is not possible for a domino to cover two white or two black cells because it will have to go diagonally or something, which is not allowed. Okay. So now let us think about what's going to happen when we try to tile this region. So you have So remember that, as I said, there are 32 black and 32 white cells to begin. And so when I remove 2 white cells, I get 30, I still have 32 black cells, but I have 30 white cells. Okay. And now if you start tiling, you put one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. I don't know, you do some patterns. You will find that at some stage you can you will end up with exactly 2 black cells, because 30 of those tiles will cover one black and one white, after which you are left with 2 black cells. But no domino can cover 2 black cells. So what we have proved mathematically rigorously is that it is impossible to tile a chessboard with diagonally opposite cells removed with dominoes. It is impossible. Okay, it's not just that you can't do it because you are incapable of it or something. It's that it's just impossible. Nobody can do it. Okay, so this is a mathematical proof that it's impossible to tile such. Okay, so I hope this point is clear. So on the other hand, notice that the problem would become very hard, this counting problem, if I removed not 2 diagonal cells but 2 adjacent corners. I removed this one and this one. Then I'm removing one black and one white, and then I have 31 black and 31 white squares, and then it's certainly possible to tile the region, and then there are in fact many tilings, probably in the billions. Okay, so 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 the reason I could ask this question is because there is a simple answer. If the answer were in the billions, I cannot. This would not be a fair question, right? I cannot expect you to answer in 10 seconds. Okay, so this is a beautiful and elegant argument to show that there cannot be a. Okay, so let us come to tilings of rectangles with dominoes. Okay, so for example, let me start with this tiling of n equal of the 1 by 5 rectangle, again with dominoes. I'm constantly tiling with dominoes for now. So remember, dominoes are these guys, 2 adjacent horizontal and 2 adjacent vertical. The DAW in domino stands for 2. So how many tilings are there of the 1 by n rectangle in general? So let's try for n equals 5. Okay. So remember what a tiling is. It should tile the entire region and there should not be any overlaps. Okay. So what I can do for starters, I have to tile the entire region. Okay. So let's look at this n equals 5 example. This first cell has to be tiled. So, I mean, here vertical dominoes make no sense. I mean, there's nothing in the, there's nothing above. So I only need to use horizontal tiles, horizontal dominoes. So first let me tile the first 2 cells with the domino. Okay. Then I'm left with these 3 cells. So then let me again do the same thing. Let me tile this guy with the domino. These 2 cells. So what I've tiled this, these 2 cells, then these 2 cells. Now this cell is remaining. I cannot possibly tile it with a domino because domino needs 2 cells and this is just 1. Okay. So this again shows that it's not possible to tile the 1 by 5 rectangle with dominoes. On the other hand, suppose this cell were not there, so I was looking at n equals 4, then I do exactly what I just did. I tile the first 2 cells with 1 domino and I tile the next 2 cells with 1 domino and I'm done. This cell is not there for n equals 4. It's only these 2. And now I have tiled the region. Okay. I'm not asking, just to be clear, I'm not asking how many dominoes you are going to use. I don't know what happened here. I'm asking how many tilings there are, how many ways are there of tiling. So if n is even, like if n is 4, then there is exactly one way, which is to tile the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, sixth. So what we have shown is that the answer is 1 if n is even and 0 if n is odd. Okay? I hope that's clear. Let's go to the 2 by n rectangle case. Now, let's make our lives a little more difficult. So the first 1 by n case is very easy. There's either one tiling or there's none. Okay, so now for the 2 by n rectangle, things are more harder. Even this n equals 5 case is not easy. But in this case, at least you can see that there is always a tiling for any 2 by n rectangle. It is easy to see why, because I can simply use the vertical dominoes. I use n vertical dominoes for any 2 by n rectangle and I will get a tiling. Okay, so the answer is much more complicated. For 2 by n, in particular for this 2 by 5, you can try and compute, it's not so easy. Okay, I think the answer is 13, but you can check. Okay, so how do we do this? So it turns out we have already solved this problem in the last class. So let me remind you, let me stop sharing for a second and share my other file from the last class. Remember, we were talking about perfect matchings of the ladder graph. So the perfect matching of the ladder graph is exactly the same problem as tiling. And for this case, we already obtained the answer. So let me repeat the argument, since many of you here are did not attend the first lecture. So let me go back to the, oh sorry, let me share the other file. Okay, so suppose I want to tile the 2 by n rectangle. Okay, so every cell here must be tiled, right? Well, that's the definition of a tiling. It must be part of a domino. So look at this first cell, top left cell. It's either part of a horizontal domino or a vertical domino. So suppose it's part of a vertical domino, then what remains is a 2 by n minus 1 rectangle. And then you can tile it in whatever way you like. And when you add this extra tiling, you will obtain a tiling of the 2 by n. On the other hand, this could be part of a horizontal domino. So there are only two possibilities. This is the second possibility. Now, if it is part of a horizontal domino, then this cell necessarily has to be part of a horizontal domino. It cannot be part of a vertical domino, because then you would have an overlap here. That's not allowed. So if this is horizontal, then this is forced to be horizontal. And then what you obtain is a 2 by n minus 2 rectangle. And every single tiling of that will give you, when you add these two horizontal, will give you a tiling of the 2 by n. And it is clear that these two sets are disjoint, because in the first case this was tiled by a vertical domino, in the second case by a horizontal. Okay. So therefore, the number of tilings of the 2 by n rectangle is equal to the number of tilings of the 2 by n minus 1 rectangle plus number of tilings of the 2 by n minus 2 rectangle. And this is exactly the recursion for the Fibonacci numbers. And it turns out that the initial conditions almost match, exactly like the ladder graph example. And you obtain the n plus 1 at Fibonacci. Okay. So I've already done this in the last class, so I'll not go through the details again, except to point out the connection with the ladder graph. So how do you see that these two are the same? So suppose you look at suppose you create a graph from this 2 by n rectangle by putting a vertex at the center of every face and connecting two vertices if the faces are adjacent, that is, they share an edge. So then you would get a path graph of length n here, a path graph of length n here, length n minus 1, that is n vertices, and then you would have vertical connections like this, so it will look like a ladder. Okay? And that's exactly what the curve is. So these, and then perfect matching there is exactly a tiling. So perfect matching there, if you remember the definition, is exactly corresponds to tiling. Okay, so these two problems, perfect matchings of graphs and tilings, domino tilings of rectangular regions, are very closely related. Okay. All right. So let's go to the 2m by 2n rectangle general. So far I did 1 by n rectangle, 2 by n rectangle, and now you might try to do the 3 by n rectangle, and then you will find that this is a much harder problem. And you could try the general m by n rectangle. Again, just like the 1 by n rectangle example, if m times n is odd, so if both m and n are odd, m times n is odd, and then you cannot tile a m by n rectangle with dominoes because each domino uses two cells. So at least one of them has to be even. So let us look just for simplicity for the 2m by 2n rectangle. Okay? Both m and n are integers. 2m by 2m and 2n are therefore even integers, and so there are 4 mn cells, and this certainly has a tiling. And the question was asked, how many tilings there are of this 2m by 2n, and let's call that number f2m. And this problem is motivated from statistical physics, and it has to do with the problem of adsorption. So if you remember your chemistry, adsorption of gas molecules on a solid is the absorption on the surface of the solid. Okay, so and it is generally known that for many solids, the surface of a solid is a square lattice, is this rectangular region. Okay, that's why this kind of problem came up naturally in physics. And so it turned out that in the same year, 1961, two independent groups, one was Temperley and Fisher at I think Oxford, and Kastelein, who was working in Holland at the time. He was working for Shell, the oil company. Both these groups gave this amazing formula for the number of tilings of the 2m by 2n rectangle with dominoes. So let me read out the formula. So it's 4 raised to the power m times n times the product of j going from 1 to n, k going from 1 to n, of cos squared j pi by m plus 1 plus cos squared k pi by 2n plus 1. Okay. So let us appreciate, I want to spend some time, appreciating the non-triviality of this formula. So m and n are integers, and unless m is some 1 or 2 or something, we don't know a general formula for cosine squares like this. I mean, for example, there is a formula for cos pi by 7, for example, but there is, and it's quite complicated. It has square roots inside square roots and things like that. But then if you go to cos pi by 9, cos pi by 11, these are all odd integers. Cos pi by 13, there are no known formulas. And in general, these numbers are quite badly irrational, even after squaring them. So I have one irrational number, I'm squaring it. I have another irrational number, I'm squaring it, and then I'm adding these two numbers to get another irrational number. And I have m times n of such irrational numbers. Okay? So in general, there is no way you can see that when you take the product of all these things, you will actually get a, not only will you get a rational number, but you will actually get an integer after multiplying by 4 pi. Okay? So it's I mean, no one could have guessed this formula. I mean, it just comes out of nowhere. Okay? And the amazing thing, and this sometimes happens in science, that in the two different groups of people happen to end up solving the same problem. So I should say though that Temperley-Fisher solved this only for this rectangle, but Castelline solved it for a huge class of tiling problems. And these are, so Fisher, both Fisher and Castelline are physicists, so they were really motivated from the physics. Okay. All right. So it's really amazing formula, and let me illustrate it with this example for m equals 3, n equals 2. So this is a 4 by 6 rectangle, and I want to tile it with dominoes. And now if you plug in that formula, you get 4 raised to 6 times cos squared pi by 5 plus cos squared pi by 7, 2 pi by 5 pi by 7, etc., etc. You can see there are 6 terms. And each one of those is an irrational number. It's not like these two irrational numbers will sum up and become a rational number. That's not going to happen. So you are going to get, adding these numbers still gives you irrational numbers. And 4 raised to 6 is 4096, and all of these numbers are fairly small. But when you multiply these, you get exactly 281, okay, which is the number of tilings. So if you're bored, you can try and calculate. If you're bored sometime and have nothing to do, you can try and show that they're exactly 281. It's not easy. Okay. A cleverer thing you could do is to program this and try to calculate, get the computer to calculate all of them. Anyway, so this is a highly non-trivial formula. Okay. Okay, so let me now look at large tilings, large random tilings. So suppose in this example, I've taken a 40 by 40 rectangle, and I have taken a random tiling. So what is a random tiling? As I said, you have this huge list of tilings, all possible tilings, and you sort of close your eyes and pick one at random. Now, picking a random tiling is itself a hard problem, is itself a subject of mathematics, which is a problem of sampling. It's a problem in statistics and probability, and this is itself hard, but there are well-known algorithms to do it. So let's assume this is one of them. So here is a random tiling. You can see it's full of dominoes. Some of them are horizontal, some of them are vertical. And if you stare at it a little bit, you see it's like one of those Sherlock Holmes mysteries, you know. So what Sherlock Holmes often notices is that there is nothing special to notice, right? So it's like that. So if you look at this top left region, let's say small region of this tiling, it sort of looks the same as the bottom right region, which looks the same as the central region, which looks the same as any other. Okay, so all of them look roughly the same. There is no distinguishing feature of any region. Okay, so I will contrast this with another example very soon. But for now, just keep in mind that a random tiling looks completely disordered. There is no structure there. Okay, and for instance, there are going to be roughly as many horizontal dominoes as there are vertical dominoes. Okay, so there's nothing special to see. Another nice property of these tilings is one of the things I said earlier. you can get all tiling starting from very basic moves. So whenever you have two adjacent horizontal tilings, they form a 2 by 2 square. And what you can do is just rotate them so that you get two vertical dominoes. Okay. So if you have two exactly adjacent horizontal dominoes, so they share the entire edge, then you can flip them and you get two vertical dominoes. Now, let me show you that at least when m equals 2 and n equals 4, so that is the 2 by 4 rectangle, you can start with the all horizontal dominoes and get everybody. Let me just show you how it's. So here is the all four domino. Uh, all horizontal domino tiling. By the way, this is exactly the 2 by n case, and so the answer, the total, all the tilings are listed here, and there are 5 of them, which is a Fibonacci. So it makes sense. Okay, so here is the all horizontal tiling. So what I could do is I could do this operation on the top two, and then I get this tiling, the fourth tiling. Similarly, I can do it on the middle two, and then I get the third tiling. I can do it in the bottom two, and then I get the second. Now, if I start with the third tiling and I do it on the bottom two, I get the last tiling. So you see, I have started, which is all vertical. So I've started with the all horizontal tiling, and I've gotten all vertical, and I have everything in between, just using these elementary moves. And it's a general result, and it's not obvious at all, but it's a general result that you can always do this for any m and n. So you start with the all horizontal tiling in a, let's say, 2m by 2n grid, and you can make the transformation and get the all vertical. Just to show you, here is when m and n are 4, so the 4 by 4 case. Here is the all vertical tiling, and you know, if I make certain moves, like I rotate these two, I get this tiling, and then, you know, I can do a whole bunch of sequence of moves, and I can get every single tiling over here. Okay, so all tilings one can get using a sequence of such. Okay. So, so as I showed you this beautiful formula of Castelline and Campbell-Fisher, it's very nice, but it's hard to do computations with it. I mean, it's hard to not that it's not pretty, but suppose I want to know roughly how many tilings there are. It's not easy to see from this formula. So one can look at how it grows with m and n. So suppose I take m equals n, so I'm looking at the square, 2n by 2n square. Then one can show that the number of tilings of the 2n by 2n square, domino tilings, is approximately some constant raised to the power the number of cells, which is 4n squared, where this constant turns out to involve three well-known constants in mathematics. It's e raised to g by pi, where e, you know, is the exponential base, pi, you know, and g is this infinite series, convergent series, which is 1 minus 1 by 1 squared minus 1 by 3 squared plus 1 by 5 squared minus 1 by 7 squared. This infinite sum converges, and it converges to a constant which doesn't seem to be related to any of the other constants. So it's called Catalan's constant, and it's roughly 0.915. It's an irrational number, and so the degree of freedom. So in other words, for each cell, I have roughly degree of freedom C, and so the total number of tilings is roughly C power the number of cells, which is 4. So that's why this 4n squared is chosen, and this C is roughly 1.3. So our degree of freedom per cell for this rectangular tiling is 1.3. Okay. So that tells us how much freedom we have in some sense to play with. Okay, I'll come back to this later. Okay, so that was about rectangles. Now let me come to another region called Aztec diamonds. These are less easily motivated, but I will show you why these are so interesting and important. So an Aztec diamond is a shape obtained by taking a staircase. I take this staircase shape, let's say, let's look at this in the first quadrant. I have one cell, two cells, three cells, which are arranged in the form of a staircase. And then I reflect it about the y-axis, and then I reflect it about the x-axis. So I get this symmetric shape. Okay. So this is how the Aztec diamond of size 1 looks like, for size 2, for size 3, and size 7. Okay. So it looks, it roughly looks like a diamond, except that the edges are jagged. Okay. So how many tilings with, I'm still talking about domino tilings, about for Aztec diamond. So how many domino tilings are there of the Aztec diamond? So for us AZ1, there is clearly 2. I can do 2 horizontal dominoes or 2 vertical dominoes. Okay, so that's what I said over here. How many tilings are there of AZ2? So this is not easy anymore. So for example, you can actually do the all horizontal dominoes. So you can do this domino, and this, same thing below, and this. So that will give you 1. You can do the all vertical domino, and you can do things in between. And it turns out that there are 8 of them. Okay, and these are all 8. So this is the all horizontal, this is all vertical. You know, there are things in between. And here also, actually, you can sort of make these elementary moves by converting 2 horizontal to 2 vertical, and you'll get it. Okay. Now for larger sizes, I've listed the answer. So for 1 there was 2, 2 there was 8, for 3 there's 64, 4 there's 1024, and so on. And if you are good with factorizations, then you'll see a pattern very quickly. And it turns out that all of these are powers of 2s, exactly powers of 2s. Okay. So this is 2 power 1, this is 2 power 3, 2 power 6, 2 power 10, and so on. And what are these powers of 2s? So it's 1, 3, 6, 10, 15, 21. These are exactly the triangular numbers. And it's a highly non-trivial result that the number of tilings of domino tilings of AZ of n, the Aztec diamond of size n, is exactly 2 to the n into n plus 1. And this is not at all obvious. You cannot see in any easy way how to, for example, match this with the number of subsets of 1 through n plus 1 by 2. Okay, so it's a highly non-trivial statement. And that is in some sense the motivation for this problem. So why should you care? Because the answer is so clear and so clean and so elegant. Okay? And there should be some magic going on. I mean, otherwise it's not possible for this to be exactly a power of 2. Right? Something has to be going on. How else is it possible? So that's what motivated a lot of this research. So if you calculate the number of squares in AZ of n, you will find that it's 2n into n plus 1. And so again, if I calculate the number of tilings, this I can do exactly. I don't, because it's a power of 2, I can always do it. So if I write c to the 2n n plus 1 as 2 to the n plus 1 by 2, this constant is 2 to the 1 by 4, which is roughly 1.19. And you can see, if you recall, that for the square, the 2n by 2n square, this was 1.3334, which is larger than 1.19. So in some vague sense, which one can make precise, but I don't want to. It will take us far afield. The square is easier to tile than the Aztec diamond because you have less degree of freedom in the Aztec diamond. Okay, somehow that's the intuition. Okay, now let's take a look at a random tiling of the Aztec diamond. So this is a large Aztec diamond, I don't know, 50 by 50 or something, size 50 that is. And what I have done, or not I, these pictures are all from the internet. So what someone has done is picked a random tiling of a large Aztec diamond of this AZ of 50. And something remarkable happens, which is very unlike the rectangle case or the square case, which is that this region gets frozen. These corner regions get frozen. Okay, so what happens is that with very high probability, all the tilings in this left corner region and the right corner region will be vertical. All the tilings in the top corner and bottom corner will be horizontal, and in between there will be some mess. Okay, and the remarkable thing is, the larger you take the Aztec diamond, in some sense you should be getting more randomness, but this becomes more and more deterministic. If I take of a size 1000, I'm almost sure to get these frozen things. Okay, of course, there in the center there will still be one randomness. So this is called the Arctic Circle phenomenon. So this is what I said. The answer becomes less and less random as you go larger and larger. So this is somehow paradoxical. You would think that as things get larger and larger, they would get more and more random. But somehow what happens is they get less and less random. So what happens in general is there are three regions or three phases. So, and you can see this here. So there are two kinds of analogies people make. One is with the three states of matter for water, for example. So there is the frozen region outside, which is called the ice region. There is the disordered region, which looks, here it looks sort of like the rectangle. If you look inside, you won't be able to distinguish it with a rectangle timing. So there is, that's the gaseous region. And there is a curve which separates the two. That is called the liquid region. So that's one kind of analogy people make. The other analogy, and that's why it's called the Arctic Circle, is with the geology of the Earth, or not the geology, with the climates of the climatic regions of Earth. So you know that there's the Arctic region, there's the temperate region, and there's the tropical region. So it's like that. So these frozen regions where you have really a lot of ice and snow are these regular regions. And then there is the Arctic region, which is, the temperate region, which is much more disordered. And there is an Arctic Circle, just like on the Earth, which separates the two. So this is called the Arctic Circle phenomenon. Okay, so that's what I said over here. There are three regions. And then there are two regions and an Arctic Circle separate. And so just to tell you that this is all part of current research, Andrei Okunkov won the Fields Medal in 2006, partly for explaining these results and relating them to topics in more advanced areas of mathematics like representation theory and algebraic geometry. Okay, it turns out that there's a deep connection between these two, and that's one of his that's one of the Fields Medals award. Okay. More recently, probabilists have like Stasmirnov have won the Fields Medal for not exactly the same but related things in probability. So it turns out that as you take n going to infinity, you will get this region separating the two will become exactly a circle, and that's why it's coming out. In general, you'll have an optic curve. And these are the frozen regions, this is the disordered region, and this is. Okay, it will get more and more regular. This pattern will get better and better as you go larger, somewhat paradoxically. Okay, so I should talk about tiling. So and I'm running short of time. So let me come to so you can ignore what is written. So I'll go directly to explaining what a plane partition is. So this partitions are important objects in number theory and combinatorics, and plane partitions are a three-dimensional generalization. So you don't need to know about partitions. I'll go directly. I can explain directly. So imagine you have many boxes, unit cubes, and you stack them in a corner of a room such that they are as packed into the corner as possible. Another way of saying it is that you take a room and you rotate it so that the corner of the room is at the bottom, and so gravity acts like that, vertically downwards, and everything will get pushed down. And such an arrangement is called a plane partition. So in other words, you stack boxes such that the heights at each position decrease weakly as you go along either of the axes in any row or column. So these are decreasing, these are decreasing, these are decreasing, and these are decreasing. Okay, and you have finite number of boxes. So it turns out that these plane partitions can be viewed also as tilings. This time not domino tilings, but of the square lattice, but kind of tiling of the triangular lattice. So what you're going to do, just like a domino was two adjacent cells in a square lattice, a rectangular lattice, here you take two adjacent cells, but this now can be done in three ways, not two. So if you look at this, focus on this cell, I can take either its neighbor over there to form a diamond-like shape. I can take its neighbor over here to form this diamond-like shape, or I can take its neighbor below to form this diamond-like shape. And what we are going to do is we are going to tile hexagonal regions of the triangular lattice with these shapes. These are called lozenges. Okay, so I have these three kinds of tilings as I explained, and if you tile 3 by 3 by 2 hexagon, for example, with lozenges, for example, here is one tiling. The amazing thing is that your mind plays tricks on you, and then it looks like a plane partition. So, for example, this now looks like a room of width 2, length 3, and height 3. Right? This is your mind playing tricks on you. But if you look carefully, each one of these things is actually a lozenge. So this one is this lozenge, this one is also that lozenge, this one is that lozenge, and these ones are these lozenges. Okay? So it's rather it's the way perspective works for human cognition. So actually it's a tiling. It's a two-dimensional object, but somehow your mind automatically converts it to 3 dimensions. And the slightly irritating thing is that it can convert it into 3 dimensions in 2 different ways. And so your mind often plays tricks on you that way. It's a bit annoying. Whether this is the top or the bottom, your mind switches between those two, and that can be a good. So here are all the lozenge tilings of a 2 by 2 by 2 room, which in other 2 by 2 by 2 hexagon, or all plane partitions of a 2 by 2 by 2 room. So again, your mind is going to play tricks on you. So this is quote unquote the empty room, in which all lozenges of one kind are to the left, the other kind are to the right, and the third kind are at the bottom. They are shaded in different regions so you can see it. And these are the other tilings, and you can see that for each one your mind automatically interprets it as a plane partition, okay? As a stacking of boxes. Okay, so here is and the way this is so you can ignore all these. The way this is arranged is that the ith row contains I boxes starting from I equals 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. Okay, and this is the completely filled room. Okay, so it has 8 boxes. Okay, so this is also a tiling problem. So how many tilings are there of a 2 by 2 by 2 room? You can sit and calculate. But you know, as mathematicians, we want the most general answer. So it turns out that there is an exact formula for any ABC for an A by B by C room, and this was given by Percy McMahon, who was a lieutenant in the English Army, who was posted in India for 5 years. After his term was over, he went back and decided enough of all that. He wants to do mathematics. So he actually wrote, so he developed the theory of partitions and plane partitions quite a bit. And in fact, he wrote this book called Combinatory Analysis, which really laid many of these things down very rigorously, and he proved many nice theorems there. Among his most beautiful results is this formula for the number of plane partitions inside an A by B by C box, which is, as I said, the same as the number of lozenge tilings of an A by B by C hexagon. And this is given by this amazing formula. It's called the box formula. So A, B, and C are positive integers. So I runs from I to 1 to A, J runs from 1 to B, K runs from 1 to C, and it's I plus J plus K minus 1 divided by I plus J plus K minus 1. Really amazing formula. Of course, there are lots of cancellations here, but it's not obvious that you will always get an integer, but you will. And notice that the denominator can't be 0, because the minimum value is 1. Okay. So there are many symmetries also of lozenge tiling, so this can also be considered. So let me give you one example. So here are a lot of lozenge tilings. Let us look at those lozenge tilings which are vertically symmetric. That is to say, if I reflect it about the center, central vertical line, I get the same kind. So for example, this is not vertically symmetric. When I reflect this about the central axis, I will get this one. Right? They will, these two will switch. So it's not vertically symmetric. On the other hand, this one is. Okay. Similarly, this one is, but these two aren't, and so on. Okay. So there are many that are symmetric that way. Another symmetry that one can employ is rotation by 120 degrees. If you rotate by 120 degrees, you will again get a tiling of the same hexagon, and you can ask yourself how many tilings are there which are symmetric in the A by B by C rectangle, which are symmetric about this rotation. So of course A and ABC have to be for that too, like that. So there are many symmetries, and you can ask. And the amazing thing is that for each one of those symmetry classes, there are nice formulas like this formula. They're a little more complicated to describe, but they're still nice product formulas. You know, something which is not at all obvious. Okay, so That's there's another symmetry, but I'm lacking time, so I'll stop there. I'll not go into that. Another thing one can do is talk about random tilings. So I take a large hexagon, like this, I don't know, 30 by 30 or whatever, 30, 30, 30 hexagon. And I take, just like in the Aztec diamond, I take a random tiling. And again, this Arctic Circle phenomenon happens. You get frozen regions in the near the corners. Okay. So the coloring is for the three different types of lozenges. And then there is a circle, there's a curve that separates it, and then you get something more disordered in this. Okay. And for the hexagon, again, it turns out that the curve that separates it is a circle. This is not at all obvious again, because a circle has much more symmetry than a hexagon. So, but it turns out that that is indeed the case. And actually, you can do much more. You can do more general regions also. This was part of Okunkov's Fields Medal work. You can in fact take any nice enough region. One has to be careful about what nice means. It need not even be convex. And you can consider random tilings there. So here is a non-trivial example. Here is this funny non-convex region. It's a non-convex polygon, and you have a triangular lattice inside, and you pick a random tiling of this region, and again you will get this Arctic Circle phenomenon. You will have frozen regions. You can see frozen regions near the corners, like here even, and there'll be a curve separating it. And if you look carefully, here the curve is heart-shaped. It's a cardioid. Okay, so you can get all kinds of curves this way, depending on the region you choose. And Okunkov and others gave a general results to understand the curve from the region. So you give them a region, they will come up with, they have an algorithm which will tell you what the curve is. It could be quite complicated, but you can at least numerically plot it. Okay, so I think I'm done. I'll stop here, and thank you for your